All right. Thanks everyone for joining us on another of our Digistore webinars. Today's webinar is about effective collaborative workgroup storage. It's around the developing and implementation of a shared storage plan, and it's really, I guess, an information session for people as opposed to a stock standard sales pitch. Really, it's more of a it's an education session that we want to take people through, just to I guess pose the questions to you guys and get you guys to pose the questions internally as to how to develop a shared storage plan, or things that you may or may not have thought about before. All right. So, as some of you may know, my name is Sean Curran. I'm the National Sales Manager of Digistore. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But what I would say is definitely take note of my details there. My phone number's there, email's there. If you're lucky enough, I can give you my mobile number as well. But I certainly want to make sure that everyone's aware we do post a lot of content on our Digistore Facebook. We keep in contact with a lot of our customers via Twitter, and of course LinkedIn. We often put a lot of professional articles up there, and it's I guess a business update as well from Digistore to our customers about positions that are open or fantastic business articles that we've found. Following Digistore is absolutely a great way to keep up to date with also events, specials that we've got going on, and as I said before, the technology developments and a hell of a lot more as well. Okay, so we've got three people presenting today. We've got myself, who's on the left-hand side, Johan Pretorius, who's one of our account managers, and same with Matt Wood, who's an account manager as well at Digistore. Just to let everyone know, we are taking questions throughout the webinar. Some we may be able to answer straight away. Many we may not be able to answer, but at the same time, we'll try and answer them at least in the Q&A section if we can't answer them on the way through. And if we can't answer them on the webinar today, we will be taking a note of all questions and coming back to you guys with responses on those. So feel free to ask any questions at any time, and we'll get to them as we go. All attendee microphones are muted to avoid background noise. So we won't be turning those ones on. Otherwise, we do get feedback and things like that as well. And after the fact, we will be sending an on-demand link in the follow-up email that we send out to everyone, just to say, here's the on-demand viewing. So if you have to either duck off, or you have been late, or you need to forward it to other people within your organization, or friends, family, Facebook friends, all that sort of stuff, we can get that sorted as well. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Digistore, and for those that may have worked in the past, I wanted to outline exactly what it is that Digistore does. Just as a refresher for some, and as I said, for those of you that are new to Digistore, just to do an overview, I guess, of what we do. Most obviously, people look at a reseller like Digistore and says, well, they sell product, and yeah, absolutely we do, but we do a hell of a lot more than just sell product. We often take the viewpoint, more frequently than not, that looking at a problem, or looking at a workflow, or looking at a solution from a product-centric point of view is rarely the best way to achieve your optimal solution, or your media requirement, or your deliverables, or really your facilities requirement. And the reason that is we are passionate about this industry. Now, it doesn't sound like a simple link, but our passion is really the technology and helping people achieve their goals. We live and we eat and we breathe this technology. We see the purpose of implementing technology not about shifting boxes and putting them in your facilities and giving everyone the thumbs up. It's more about the purpose of empowering creative organizations, creative individuals, media entities, film companies, VFX houses. That's where we get our passion from, and that's where we get the thrill of doing what we do. So every single day we get to talk to high-end post houses, broadcasters, single visual effects operators, and putting together elegant solutions to help them achieve their goals. We love the challenge. It's fun. It throws a hell of a lot of challenges in our way, but we do enjoy actually creating these solutions from scratch as well. So for us, it's not about the products. It's about the services that we can provide for you guys. But most of all, it's about seeing our customers thrive. And we haven't been doing it for a short amount of time. We've been doing it for quite a number of years. So in January, Digistore celebrates its 25th year, which is pretty fantastic. So that's 25 years of providing elegant solutions to some of the most demanding organizations and application areas. So from the good old days when we were renting out Medea drives and Tower Avids to film companies to cut some of the blockbusters that have been done in Australia, all the way through to helping TVC houses put together award-winning facilities to achieve what they need to produce. And I guess from our experience, we have a lot of good use cases, which we will be going through later in the slides. But what I wanted to articulate there is a lot of those use cases are based on our extensive experience, what we've done before, what we've learned from other people's facilities and organisations, and we keep providing more and more elegant solutions. And it may sound hammy to the more cynical of us. I'm generally a cynical person, but to be perfectly honest, it is a shared journey. You guys are successful, we're successful, and we'd like to continue that going, obviously. So if we're successful, we feel that you guys will be successful, and if you guys are successful, we feel that we will be successful as well. We like to help your facility achieve its goals, and it's not necessarily about shifting the most amount of boxes. It's really making sure that you guys can achieve those creative goals, and we really want to help you guys make that a reality. So, as I said, what does Digistore do? So Digistore account reps and consultants will work with you and your facility to get an understanding of the key features of what of your problems or what your pain points are within your facility. We really want to find out what you need to achieve, what you need to deliver, and what you need to produce. How quickly does it need to happen? What are the objectives? What's the resource pool or the budget, and who are the people involved? What's your ideal workflow? We really love putting that together. We like to listen and discuss exactly what you need to do. What we then like to do is put together a proposal to say, in order to achieve those goals, here's the systems that you will need, and we sort of look at it in a way of, we have a toolbox of fantastic tools like shared storage or asset management systems, and we like to grab the best tools in order to create that facility for you. So we do as you can see there, we do the full implementation solution the entire way through. We'll do the researching, the costing of that solution. We'll maintain the supplier and vendor relationships to get the best information, the best knowledge to assist you guys with that, and all the way up to the implementation of the solution, the installation by our engineers, the testing by our engineers and by the vendors, ongoing support plans, and really looking then to the next project and the new requirement and continuing that process. So we like to work in a partnership with you guys. And to be perfectly honest, it really is all about the relationship. We want the customers to feel that they've invested in a solution that they can trust and that they understand, and it's from a supplier that they know has provided the right advice from thorough understanding of their requirements from a technical and a business perspective, and that's important. We can do it from a technical perspective, but we also need to help you guys understand the business perspective of that as well and help you with that. So we don't simply want to supply a product that you guys have requested and just hope it works. It's not good business for us. It's not good business for you guys fundamentally. So the webinar is hosted by Digistore. We have a number of application areas that we excel at. File-based tape workflows, digital cinema, DCP creation, working with 2, 4, and 5Ks, stereo, service and support, animation, finishing, quite a number of different areas. And we look at the brands that we have there. They are the best of the best, and it's probably a good point to make there. We select our brands, we select the products that we want to represent. We don't merely just go and scoop up brands at NAB or IBC. We go and do our research, and we sit down and we work out what the use case is, what the value out of that particular product is. And if we test it and we like it and we see value for it in the marketplace, we'll then take it on. We don't go and slap a whole bunch of brands on our slides just to say we can have access to them. We really want to say we pick that product for you because it is the right use case and it is appropriate for your facility. Support services is something that we both pride ourselves on and we actually enjoy doing. We have any manner of support services for the media and entertainment industry, whether that's a decap, so an on-site response, assistance with problems on site. We achieve that, and we do it for quite a number of customers on an 8 to 8 Monday to Friday basis. They're on a decap or Digistore customer assurance plan. We also do workshops, so we have a full workshop at our Tarman and South Melbourne branches. But we spend a lot of time doing workflow consultation and training and really fostering a partnership between ourselves and yourselves as well. So you'll see that come up a lot as well through this presentation. One thing I did want to focus on there was training. Digistore does a hell of a lot of training, and we do it for a number of different platforms. So whether it's Autodesk Smoke for Mac, whether it's Adobe Premiere, Final Cut, Avid, DaVinci Resolve, whatever it is you need, we generally have those training courses available. But what's very important, and it's very important to bring up in the Shared Storage Solutions webinar, is that if you are a facility that is changing and going through a change from one nonlinear editor to another, or another software package from one to the other, and you have a full facility that needs the training on that, we also provide bespoke training. The reason that we do that is for instance, a couple of years ago when people started migrating from Final Cut to Avid, there was a big change for a lot of organizations. So therefore, we wanted to guide people in how to achieve that, how to get the users feeling good about going from Final Cut to Avid for their new platform. So it's something that we do enjoy doing, and it is yet another value add that Digistore can provide to you in your shared storage plan and the retraining of your staff if need be. So now to get to the meat and the reason why we're all here. It's developing a shared storage plan. So the reason that we say developing a shared storage plan as opposed to here buy a SAN or buy some storage, it's really good. It's really fantastic. It's nothing is worthwhile doing if nothing is the planning aspect is the most important part of this, and you do need to develop that plan. It's not a plan that you can sit down and put together in 2 minutes. It's not a plan that you can necessarily put down in a couple of days. You really need to see the linkage between what that plan's going to be and how that's going to affect your facility. So why would you use shared storage? The reason that you would use shared storage is many and varied, and I've put down quite a number of points here, and there are going to be some more that crop up through this presentation. But some of the key features and also some of the pain points at the same time are listed here. So why do we suggest shared storage for people? Well, fundamentally, one of the most common is the duplication of assets. We have a lot of customers who have a lot of duplication of assets, and that can be as a result of a number of different things, whether it's networking copies of material from one suite to another, whether it's dropping it all on a USB hard drive, jumping up and walking over to someone else to give them that material. That material can be duplicated on a number of different systems, which is not a good use of storage. Shared storage can also provide a productivity and efficiency from both system to system and also department to department. So what I mean by that is there is actually quite a considerable cost to an organization to have someone copy material to a USB hard drive, walk for 3 or 4 minutes to another person's place. While they're there, they're going to get a coffee. They copy all the material over. By the time they get back to their desk, that's 10, maybe 15 minutes. Now, if you do that 5 times a day, that's 50 minutes. If you do that for 5 days, it's 250 minutes. Now, when you start thinking about freelancers and you start thinking about the cost of wages, if you have a facility of 20 or 30 people doing that, that's a considerable cost to the organization. And add on to that the duplication of assets, it starts to add up in terms of the inefficiencies of your facility. Having a centralized repository of assets is absolutely a requirement. Having master files or master assets for people is very, very important so they can source the same material. It can also assist when we start looking at versioning. Are people using the right version of that project? Are people using the most up-to-date color space on that particular piece of material? They all sound like very, very simple, basic, small things that you may not think on a single seat is an issue, but when you start extrapolating that out into a larger facility, it does cost a lot of money and it can reduce your efficiencies. There's a lot more in there. You know, the increase in collaboration. The only way to create a film or a TVC or even a long form piece of material, it's all about collaboration. Everyone needs to have a vested interest in getting the material in and out in the most efficient way and working closely together to achieve that goal. I guess one of the most obvious, certainly the most obvious for us, is the more you centralize that material, the more disks that you can provide to each of the users. And what that means is a greater storage size. It's also a lot more bandwidth that you can provide for those individual users. So when you start looking at those elements, putting that all together, the efficiency keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So that's sort of an overview of why you would use a shared storage solution, and there'll be more, I guess, articulation of what that looks like and how that can be achieved and what those different platforms are. But what we want to do now, I'm going to throw over to Johan briefly. And it's more about what I want him to go through is backup and archive strategies. It may not sound like it's relevant to a shared storage solution webinar, but it absolutely is. And Johan will tell you why. Won't be a second.
Morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Yeah, so we just wanted to go over backup archive, and then I'll hand it back for Sean to go through disaster recovery. And I just really wanted to define the differences for you, because we're always getting people coming in and asking, oh, I need a backup plan, I need an archive plan. And quite often they might ask for backup, but what they need is archive, and vice versa. So what a backup is and should be is a copy of what you're working on at any one given point in time. So if you're working on episode 3 of an episodic series, and that's what you're working on that day, that material shouldn't just be saved to your central storage, but it should be backed up. So you back it up that night, for instance, and then that backup would be, your disaster recovery if by some chance that overnight or that next morning something happened to your centralized storage and that material was lost and you needed somewhere to back it up from. Then go forward 24 hours to the next day. You may have done another backup overnight. That original backup then becomes superseded. That data becomes of no value or of little value because you've got your new backup. There are scenarios where, and there are a lot of backup plans. So there are scenarios where you may make, say, for instance, 5 copies, one for each night of the week. Keep them so you could go back a couple of days. But that's probably explaining all that is probably me getting a little bit ahead of myself. The important part is that data is from the original day is now superseded, so that space can be made available for another backup at a later date. So due to the large amount of data that you guys are normally working with when it comes to any of these shows, it may be terabytes of data for the one episode. Someone might go out and shoot 200 hours of footage. What happens is you end up working with quite an exceptionally large amount of data. It might be 10 terabytes or something ridiculous. At the end of the night, rather than us backing up that 10 terabytes, what we tend to do as a part of our strategies is we look for the most important parts of that data. So your actual original rushes may already be archived somewhere, and I'll get to archiving very shortly, but it may already be archived. So we don't necessarily need to back up that data. It might just be your sequence files, your project files, maybe some new graphics or titles that were made for that particular episode. So that minimizes it down to, maybe even up to a few hundred gig. And then that material is backed up. So you can see a lot of people do look at backups and go, well, my SAN's it's getting up to 100 terabytes. I can't really even afford to do backups. If I bought an LTO library, it'd be 200 slots. That's not how we look at backup. We look at it for what's the most important thing so that you need to keep between now and the next backup cycle, so that we can make sure that we've got a recovery situation available. But archive is, I'll move on to that now. It is another important part of the shared storage environment. To define archive, I guess the simplest way for me to explain it is, in any business, before computers were around, for example, your accounts department would do their accounts. That content would be relevant while they were working on it, but then they would archive it away. And they'd archive it away for a couple of reasons, and they're pretty much the same reasons that we archive our data when we're making videos and films. One, we may need it at a later date. So the accountants, they might have got audited. They might need that at a later date. Or if you're making a film, it might be the 11th hour and the producers say, no, you need to replace all those shots before that's going to go to air. You need to go back and get material from your archive. The second reason is you want to be able to create as much space on your tier 1 storage as possible for relevant content. So we get this scenario quite a bit. If I give somebody 100 terabyte SAN, they might say, oh, it's so much storage, and you know what, we're never going to get to fill this in 2 years time. Well, I'll tell you what, if you go back there in a month's time, they somehow found a way to put 100 terabytes of content onto that SAN. And the reality is, most of that doesn't really belong there because it's not relevant content to what they're working on. So what we'd like to do is take all that material off and archive it and put it somewhere more cost effective. Archiving also does come into play as far as a lot of workflows are concerned now. So rather than just moving content away from your SAN, a lot of guys will come in and they'll go, we've got 200 terabytes of content that we've shot for this film, and you go, well, our SAN, our very expensive SAN, is only 16 terabytes or is only 32 terabytes. What a lot of them will do is encode those raw rushes into a nice editorial format, for example, that's at a very low bit rate, move that onto the high-end storage and take those archives. They might have made 1 copy, 2 copies of those rushes as they came in, put them onto LTO, and then put them up on the shelves, and then use them once they've finished the editorial process, which in a lot of time film takes quite months, years sometimes. Go back and consolidate from those original rushes. Now, all this backupping and archiving can be policy driven. I'll give you a couple of quick little examples. For archives, you might have a team of, say, it's 10, 15 promo producers, and they don't know how to use the archive software, and they don't want to know how to use the archive software, and you really probably don't want to have to teach them how to use that archive software. In those scenarios, we'll just create watch folders across the sand for these guys, and once they're finished with their projects, they'll go and they'll put all that content they want archived into these watch folders. And then once a week, their archive software will sit there and run a policy that says, okay, now it's time to archive, and we'll archive all that content into a pool of tapes which is on their LTO drive. That same LTO drive and archive software, which could also be running the backup policies as well, could also, be running their weekly backup, which is only taken from a few particular folders, and maybe that runs at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and then the following week it makes another copy, and then the week after that maybe it erases the original backup that it did, so that there are 2 backups, for example, running. So it can all be policy driven, and it is really relevant once you start getting into shared storage environments to be able to actually look at these, as parts of your workflow. Okay, I'll pass over to Sean now, who's going to go through some disaster recovery.
G'day again, everyone. Okay, so disaster recovery is something that a lot more people are having to look at, and there's obviously a lot more reasons for it. Obviously, with the start of tapeless workflows or organizations going 100% tapeless, your masters are certainly a lot more valuable than what they used to be. You don't have a digibeta to go back to, or HCCAM SR deck or tape to go back to. So what is disaster recovery? It sounds pretty prescriptive, but when you start looking at your own environment, look for areas that may impact you adversely and for a significant period of time. Now, we've had customers before who have had floods, power outages for a significant amount of time, serious environmental issues, storms, flooding, all those sorts of things are part of a disaster. Now, you may tell me that it is very unlikely for that to happen. Yes, oftentimes it is an act of God, but there are more simple things like actually what happened to a facility that I know in Melbourne. They actually had roadworks going on out the front, and as they were transferring material, their fibre line was cut, so they were unable to actually put material out to a second location. So disaster recovery is not 100% foolproof, but there are ways to implement an effective strategy with disaster recovery. So what we look at when we talk to customers about disaster recovery is often offsite or co-located storage or a co-located environment. We tend to look at spinning disk, and that's often factored into a backup strategy. So Johan rightly said that the material, the work in progress material that is mission critical and very time sensitive, is often copied or duplicated very, very quickly and very, very rapidly to a backup solution. A lot of our customers are actually backing up to a data center on spinning disk. And the reason is twofold. Spinning disk is obviously faster than LTO. So in order to pull that material back, or at least take a copy of that back, it's a hell of a lot faster than having to restore all that from tape. What another customer of ours has done is they've co-located their production environment, so they have a duplication of the work in progress on their SAN, and then what they do is, if the primary facility was to go down, they actually have a few iMacs to be able to take out to their DR facility and be able to mount the SAN that is out there in order to continue production, which is an interesting way of doing it as well. So no DR strategy is the same. It needs to be tailored to what your environment is. You can also include elements of archival strategy. So you could have a snapshot or a backup going to some local disk, plus an archive of that going straight away to a secondary location. It really is about how valuable that particular material is at that particular time, and how that's going to work for your use case. A lot of people are using cloud storage now as well for that, for those master images or their mission critical material that would be that their organization would be crippled if they weren't actually able to retrieve that material very fast at all. And as the last point there says, it is designed to decrease downtime in a catastrophic failure scenario. So as I said, that could be power down for 5 or 6 days, which has happened, or it could be a storm goes through and floods your entire machine room. So one of the other reasons that we use shared storage is looking at return on investment. And what we mean by that is, how are you going to get the best bang for buck, and how are you going to utilize this shared storage to get a full return on the investment? It's all well and good to spend $500,000 on a shared storage solution and attach it to one machine. That's not necessarily a good use, and the return on investment might be a bit delayed on that, shall we say? But certainly, when we look at return on investment, the elements that we want to discuss with you guys and look at is time savings. So in order to make the investment that you guys are making in a shared storage solution, what time savings can you make in workflow efficiencies or productivity or automation? So those are elements that we look at. When we look at return on investment, we also look at how do we effectively use a tiered storage solution. And what I mean by a tiered storage solution is it's not 100% all performance disk or performance storage. It may be a tiered storage whereby you have some slower spinning disks for your non-mission critical material, or perhaps some offsite backup, even lower tiered storage. The reason that we suggest that is you can keep throwing money at performance disk to fix the problem, but that's not necessarily a good use of money. We believe we can make a far more elegant solution to achieve that, rather than just keep throwing money at the problem without any plan around it. We really want to look at what problems do you actually need to solve, and we have mentioned quite a number of these before, but it's around how do you have duplication of assets in your facility? Do you feel that your productivity and your workflow is inefficient? Do you need a better strategy for RAID protection or redundancy in your facility? Do you need faster bandwidths? Are you getting ever increasing bandwidth requirements? Those are all things that you do need to look at, and things that should be part of that plan that you're putting together. So you say that's all well and good, guys, but how do I really take the next step? You've just thrown a whole bunch of material at me, and I don't know how to actually deal with it. Now, the way to deal with it is really, the next steps are, if you're looking at a shared storage platform, ask these questions to yourself, and these are the things that you do need to consider on a day-to-day basis when you're putting together that plan. What is the solution designed to do? What is the storage solution that someone is telling you to purchase? What is that actually designed for? Is it a storage solution, as we'll go into, that someone has pitched to you? It's an IT solution. It's something that's designed for Word docs and SQL databases. Is that going to be good for video? No, it's not going to be. I can pretty much guarantee you, and I'd happily put it side by side with something else. So you look at what the system was designed to do. If it's from the media and entertainment space, generally it will be tuned specifically to look at video streaming or to look at 3D IOPS. You need to look at what your performance requirements are, and that's often something that people say, well, I've got 10 Avids and I've got 3 3D workstations. That's my use case. Well, no, it's your performance requirements could be each of those suites needs 4 streams of video, which changes the composition of that performance storage. Another element is in terms of your host applications. how does your host, what host applications do you want to use? Is that going to be the same? Will it be the same for the next 3 years? And taking those things into account. You may be using Final Cut version 7 right now, but when you decide to make that change, are you going to go for an Adobe pathway, or are you going to go for an Avid pathway? And once you make that decision, or you feel you're leaning one way or the other, different storage solutions are better for one than the other. The scaling of a storage solution definitely needs to be taken into account. Some SAN solutions, some of the best SAN solutions that I know, scale terribly. It's a very clunky way of scaling out, and it's not very elegant. I've seen some terrible solutions that are out there that scale brilliantly, but they provide very little bandwidth and very little performance. So you might have a good scale out system, and the sales pitch is fantastic. It scales brilliantly, but does it scale well for you? It scales, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's for you. Do you need to integrate with existing systems? Do you have an existing media asset management system? Do you have an existing backup strategy that you need to integrate with? Those are all critical and fundamental elements that you need to put into your shared storage plan, and we can help you with that. Have you considered a backup and archive strategy? I'm not going to go into it because I think Johan did a good job of explaining what those are. But if you haven't considered it, why haven't you considered it? And is it something that you could see impacting your business if you don't have one of those? How are you going to manage this bucket of storage? So you may have a petabyte of storage, and you might do thumbs up to everyone and say, well, we've got all this fantastic stuff, got all this fantastic disk. And my question to you would be, well, are you going to manage that via Windows Explorer or the Apple Finder? Is that your expectation? 500 terabytes, 100 terabytes, 50 terabytes is probably not best managed out of the Windows Explorer or the Apple Finder. So all things to consider. So definitely take note of those. But the next, I guess the most important part, and the thing that I would be suggesting to every single one of you, it's a very simple process. Just understand and document what your requirements are. And if you don't know, have a bit of a research. Call us. We're more than happy to help. What I would be suggesting, and I certainly tell most of my customers, is put down a conceptual diagram. There's any number of tools, I've mentioned a couple there, but there's any number of tools where you can put together a conceptual diagram and say, well, how does this material go from point A to point B? Where do I store this, in point A or point B? Where's my backup? How does that all go together? What are my edit suites looking like? On the left, I use OmniGraffle because I'm a Mac fanboy. Most people would use Visio, but for those of you that want to use a Google Docs version, there is Lucid Chart, which is actually free last time I checked. So definitely check it out. Put together a small wiring diagram. It doesn't need to be port count perfect, but it's certainly something that you would want to put together. So I'm going to hand over to Matt in a second to take you through some of the key focus points of the shared storage and elements of that shared storage. It's going to be around, first, second, and third tier storage, performance, offline and nearline, SAN versus NAS, Ethernet, fiber, backup and archive. He'll touch on that again. Cloud, he'll touch on again. But as I mentioned, the asset management side of things absolutely factors in to the equation here. So bear with me 2 secs and I'll just pass over to Matt.
Thank you, Sean. So let's kick off by talking about shared workgroup storage. Let me just go back a slide. I'm going to be covering off the following aspects, and that is storage tiering, performance nearline and offline, SAN versus NAS, Ethernet versus fiber, cloud, and asset management. So Tier 1 storage is all about high performance. In the film and television world, editors will use Tier 1 storage as their scratch disk or media drive. And because multiple editors can be connecting, it must be able to deliver multiple streams of video concurrently. It is very important to scope out and spec a Tier 1 storage solution, because if you get it wrong, the result can be drop frames. At Digistor, we reverse engineer the requirements based on the number of editors, codec being used, and how many streams. Other factors are also taken into account, such as the NLE of choice and what else might be connecting, such as a DaVinci Resolve or Autodesk Smoke, render farms or transcoding engines, as software vendors have varying requirements in terms of storage and performance. The cost per terabyte for Tier 1 storage is the highest when comparing to Tier 2 and offline, so it's important to limit the amount of media sitting on your Tier 1 and for completed projects to be moved to lower cost capacity storage tiers. Which brings us to Tier 2 or nearline. Once a project is completed, you can move to the lower cost capacity storage, and as a general rule, Tier 2 would be double the size of your Tier 1 solution. Projects can sit here for a predetermined period of time in case you need to quickly restore footage. In addition, graphic suites can connect to your Tier 2 storage as they typically don't require the same amount of performance as editorial. Tier 2 technology is normally Ethernet based, with kit being inexpensive and readily available. So you can leverage your existing infrastructure, so your cost per terabyte is less than Tier 1. After a period of time, it may be extremely unlikely you would need to restore projects, so rather than filling up your Tier 2 capacity storage, you can offline it or shelve it. This is the archive tier and is the cheapest per terabyte. Organizations might offload to LTO tape or hard drive and have them sitting on the shelf or offsite for safekeeping. Best practice is to archive to LTO tape, as it has less moving parts, which can degrade over time, and the shelf life is 30 years. In the infrequent event you require footage that has been archived, you can restore it to your Tier 1 or Tier 2 solution. Next up, I'm going to talk about SAN, NAS, and DAS. So DAS, or direct attached storage, is a storage device that directly connects to one computer. It would typically connect over Thunderbolt, SAS, Firewire, eSATA, or USB, and it can vary in performance and price. NAS is a network-attached storage device which connects over Cat5 or Cat6 network copper cabling. It can vary in performance, be it 1 gig, 10 gig, or the recently introduced 40 gig over Ethernet. Typically, a NAS is used as Tier 2 capacity storage for pushing and pulling files, as opposed to using as editorial shared storage. However, over recent years, we've seen a number of Ethernet-based shared storage solutions really mature and handle editorial clients, and we tend to refer to these as EtherSANs. And so lastly, a SAN is a shared storage network, which traditionally was fiber. However, as touched upon before, we are seeing more and more EtherSANs creeping into this category as they are able to guarantee stream performance. Consider this your tier line tier, which your suites would connect to and use as their scratch disk or media drive. So now moving on to copper or Ethernet versus fiber and who wins. And it's a really good debate, I guess. Both camps will tell you they win, so let's break it down. Ethernet cables are comprised of multiple strands of copper wire that are twisted together with 4 twisted wire pairs per cable. 2 of the pairs are used to send data and the other 2 are used to receive data. The data is transmitted via electrical signals sent through the copper cabling, and with Cat5 and Cat6 cables are designed for high-speed gigabit Ethernet. Fiber cables are made up of strands of incredibly thin optical pure glass that carry digital information with light instead of electrical currents used with Ethernet. There are 2 basic types of fiber cable, single and multi-mode. Single mode fiber cables use laser light to send signals, and they are thinner than multi-mode cables. Light emitting diodes, or LEDs, are used to send signals in multi-mode fiber cables. And multi-mode cables are usually used over short distances. There are pros and cons to both sides. So round 1, I guess, interference. Ethernet cables are vulnerable to electromagnetic interference because they work through electrical signals. Because optical fiber cables work through transmission of light, interference from electronic devices isn't really a concern. Round 2, security. Due to the way in which data is transmitted across Ethernet copper cabling, it can be vulnerable to being intercepted. Ethernet switches can help improve security. Information sent via fiber optic cables, on the other hand, is much more difficult to intercept because light can't be read in the same way signals sent via copper cabling can be. Round 3, speed. Traditionally, optic cable speed would almost always beat Ethernet cable speed, but as the technology behind Ethernet cables has advanced, Ethernet, they have caught right up. Round 4, capacity and bandwidth. Copper cabling strands are thicker than optical fiber strands, so less wires can be bundled into a 22 gauge copper cable than a 22 gauge optical fiber cable. Also, Ethernet offers less bandwidth. For example, a Cat6a cable can relay 600 megahertz over 100 meters, but a multi-mode optical fiber cable can relay 1000 megahertz over the same distance. Round 5, price. Ethernet-based shared storage solutions tend to be cheaper, can leverage existing network infrastructure, and don't tend to have the client-side licensing costs. Fiber-based solutions like StoreNext have a per-seat cost depending on your operating system and annual maintenance fees. And I guess round 6, the knockout round, some software vendors have only certified particular storage technologies. For instance, if you have a DaVinci Resolve or an Autodesk or Flame, they have certified StoreNext in a shared storage environment, which pretty much limits you to fiber. In summary, there's a number of factors which need to be taken into consideration. One of the things we do when it comes time to scoping out a shared storage solution is list all the vendors on a whiteboard and match them against your requirements. Quite often it would whittle down to a couple of options varying in price. And then we come to cloud storage, which has been around for a few years and has come down in price with many new players entering the marketplace. And people are increasingly opting for cloud storage services for saving their data or media to offsite storage systems that are maintained by third parties. And what are some of the advantages of cloud storage services? One of those is accessibility. With the advancement of technology, people now have access to different types of gadgets. You think of your iPhones and your iPads and so forth for work, as well as recreational purposes. With cloud storage services, people are no longer required to toggle files between different gadgets, which can prove to be a little bit sort of fiddly. Files and information can be accessed from different places, provided that there is an internet connection. Second up would be cost. When it comes time to backing up data, backup tapes or external hard drives can stack up in terms of price. Apart from that, a lot of time is required for manually completing that routine backup if you don't have an automated system in place. But with cloud storage services, don't necessarily require traditional backup methods and offers plenty of storage space at low costs. And sharing an entire folder or a single file with other users can be easily carried out with a few clicks of a mouse, which makes it convenient and easy for the users. Syncing, automatic update of files across different devices is ensured by syncing. And as a result of that, users can have access to the uploaded files irrespective of the device or computer being used. And security, I guess one of the biggest advantages of cloud storage service is that it helps add another layer of protection to important files or media. Secure locations are chosen for backups that are physically removed from the originals. And as a result of that, data is kept by the users within the cloud, and services remain absolutely safe and secure from all types of or unauthorized use or access. But what are some of the disadvantages of cloud storage services? I guess there can be technical problems. There is no doubt that cloud storage services allow people to access information from any place with an internet connection, but technical problems can occur at any time. The chances of technical issues or outages can never be disregarded, and even the most highly efficient and quality cloud storage service providers run into such risks at different times. Security, even though it is quite hard to break the security measures adopted by the cloud storage providers, it's not impossible. For instance, a compromise within any of the servers where the personal information of millions of users is stored can expose it to hackers. Excuse me. Speed. There are times when users of cloud storage services face difficult times downloading and uploading large documents or files or media, as they tend to take a lot of time. So it's important to determine if cloud-based storage is suitable for your situation. For instance, you cannot expect some servers sitting in a data center to be your local scratch disk or media drive. If you would like to push content to the cloud, you also need to consider the internet connection and how long it would take to upload. If you want to sync your tier 1 or tier 2 storage to the cloud, for most people this isn't practical because of the speed of internet connection going into the facility. And last up, I'm going to be talking about media asset management in this section. And if you're not doing it, then look, don't worry, most people aren't. However, there are some significant advantages in having a MAM in place, which can help manage your tier storage solution and solve many business user cases. This particular definition on the slide is put forward by one of our vendors, Avid, and is probably the best description I have ever seen. There are multiple players in the market, so it's really about scoping out which one works best for your use case. So a good MAM solution becomes the central brain that knows all about the media across your storage tiers. It combines human and automated workflows for optimal efficiency. It also integrates and unifies workflows across the media lifecycle from, ingest to playout or archive. And it allows the intelligence in the enterprise to be stored with content through all the stages of the life cycle. And we're really talking about metadata there. Further, it's a solution that combines capabilities offered by services, connectors integrating third-party hardwares and software, which may already be in your facility. So think about archive software or transcoding engines. You can also use data models representing the knowledge and processes driving the business. And not to rule out, there can be different GUI layouts for user roles, whether it be editors, producers, or directors, because they don't all need to see the same metadata or information. So I guess this MAM slide is a bit more of a teaser, which hopefully leaves you wanting to know more about the benefits of asset management. And if you would like to know more, then give us a bell and we can help out. So I'm going to hand back to Sean now, who's going to cover off some file management layers across the different storage tiers. So just give us a second while we hand over.
Thanks for that, Matt. So look, just before we jump into the use cases, which I promised before, we will be doing the use cases for some of the facilities that we've designed or some of the facilities that we've put together previously, but also some conceptual diagrams as well around that. And it's really about the shared storage aspect of it. What I wanted to just cover off, there's a small element that that often we discuss with people that are looking at, I guess, I won't say not lower tier SANs, but I guess more simplistic SANs and lower barrier of entry SANs. And in terms of shared storage, there's generally two different types of lower cost SANs. One is a volume level locking SAN and one is a file level locking SAN. Now, I just wanted to cover that off because there is a distinct difference between the two. Generally, most people are going for file level locking SANs these days, but volume level locking SANs are still out there. So companies like FiberJet, for instance, by CommandSoft, they use a volume level locking SAN, and that's a great system as a starting entry point for 2- and 3-seat houses. But I just wanted to articulate the differences between the two. A volume level locking SAN is operationally it's quite simple, and the implementation is quite simple. Now, we've sold a lot of smaller SANs for a lot of smaller facilities based on the volume level locking SAN environment because it's easier for them to administer. It's a basic system to administer, but very, very powerful at the same time. What it means is that you're able to read all the volumes. Each edit suite is able to read all the volumes, but they're only allowed to write to one volume. Now, why would you do that? You may have a facility that dry hires rooms out, for instance, and you want to make sure that you provision enough storage just for that person, just for that volume. So the overall infrastructure is reduced because you don't have a control CPU controlling the read and write access. A file level locking sound, on the other hand, enables you to read all volumes and write to all volumes. Now, there is a level of complexity added into that because you need effectively what's called a metadata controller. So the complexity is slightly higher. It's not super complex. It just makes the topology and the infrastructure slightly different. So just to give you a diagram of what that looks like, this is a volume level locking SAN. So edit 1 has read and write privileges to volume 1. Edit 2 has read and write privileges to volume 2. But if we want to have material on edit 1, but they want to source it from volume 2, they are actually able to do that. They just can't write to that volume. So here's an example of that. They're able to read and write from their own volume and read from each other's volumes, but they can't write to each other's volumes while the other is writing to it. So we make that delineation there, because when we have a look at a file level locking SAN, it's read and write to whatever volume you want. Now that's a very simplistic explanation of it, and we can talk more about that with yourselves. But just to I guess set the framework there. This is more around the SAN environment, less about the NAS environment. So just one more thing before we go into the use cases. It's the vendors. Who's the best? This is probably the most common question that we get asked when we go into facilities. What's the best? What's good? You know, why is that better than this? Why is that better than that? And is that vendor actually better than this one? Now, it really does depend on what you want to achieve. I've seen fantastic SAN and NAS products go into environments and not be the best, I guess, the best of breed solution, and certainly the best selection for that facility. But it really depends on what you want to achieve. As I said, if you're doing high-end post and VFX, one SAN is going to be better than another. It doesn't mean the technology is necessarily better. It just means the usage is going to be better for your facility. So, you know, are we going to get in trouble? Well, we don't toe the party line, and that's one of the things that you know, we pride ourselves on. And it's certainly when we have our sales guys start at Digistor and continue through the years, one thing that we do pride ourselves on is we don't toe the party line just to grab vendors and grab one vendor and throw it at everyone and try and get as much kit out there. As I said before, we look at all of these storage solutions, all of these storage vendors, and really all vendors to look at them and say, well, is this tool the right fit for this customer? Oftentimes we can select those just by sitting down and talking with you, but we like to offer a couple of solutions to help you achieve your goals. Okay, so we're going to jump into the use cases now, and I guess the most important one of the most important lines that we had when we were devising this was cascading complexity, bandwidth, and workflows. As the complexity builds, the complexity of your workflows and the complexity of your bandwidth and the complexity of your environment, it becomes more and more a requirement to actually look closer at how you're going to deploy this shared storage solution. So I'll pass over to Johan now, and he can go over the overview and into a couple of examples.
Thanks, Sean. Hi again. So I guess the way we're going to do this is we're going to start with a very, very simple SAN, so a 2-seat, and we're going to go through and add complexities to it as we go, as Sean's saying, the cascading of complexity. I'll go through a few, Matt will go through a few, and then Sean will go through a couple as well. So I'm starting with the first SAN. So your first SAN, what do you do? So I think we've already gone through a few a few things you need to take into account as far as, getting all your own information from your business together as to what you're doing and what you want to achieve. But what I think you should do is you should ask around, right? You've got competitors and you've got peers out there. First thing I would do is I would go and find out what they're doing. Like if you don't feel comfortable going to a reseller, for example, so I know if I go to Digistore, they're going to try and sell me this or something. You might have some perceptions in your head. Go and find out what your competitors are doing. It's realistically the easiest way to start off. And what are your options? So your options when you're looking at a two-seat sand are almost anything, right? So, and I say that with a giant caveat for two reasons. One, almost every sand that we will sell will cover two seats, of course. One thing, they might not necessarily be one of the financially the most, I guess, the best, best financially, the best product for the job. And two, sorry, just give me a second. I've had the flu, so I'm just about to cough. Two, it might not be a product which is made for the media industry. So there are lots of shared storage options out there, and I think Sean touched on this as well. Not everything is made for our industry. So check if the products, if it's, if the manufacturers go to IBC and NAB, it's always a good way to check. What should you avoid? Well, anything, again, which is not made for this industry. Really, it's the Achilles heel of my first sand. Who I shouldn't ask is my general IT guy. Now, I love IT guys. We deal with them every day. They take care of our mail servers, all sorts of things that we need them to take care of. But if I go up to one of them who I've never met before and I say, here is my problem. I've got two computers. I want to connect them to some shared storage. I need this bit rate to do this codec. They might not know that they can't do it. They're going to look at the statistics and say, yeah, I can sell you this NAS or that NAS, and that should be able to do it. But the reality is it can't. So these are the first problems we see people come to us with. They've purchased some shared storage that they don't understand why it doesn't work, but it wasn't built to do that job. Look at your editing software, your codecs and bit rates. Again, this is just gathering business information. And if budget is a concern, which I think it is at this point, because your workstations and your edit suites may have only cost a very particular amount. Look at what the ownership's going to be. So a sand may last 3 to 5 years, for example, is probably a good time. Figure out what those costs are and how you're going to recoup them. Because, you can dry hire a suite out, and this is a very early argument that people have, is I can dry hire my suite out, or I can hire my suite out with an editor, but I can't hire out the shared storage. So you need to look at a way to package those in together as far as overall costs for billing out. So this is pretty much, what a first sand sort of scenario looks like. You've probably got an LTO tape drive there for doing your backups. You want to start with simple and smart options. So what are they? So traditionally, they're your cheaper ones. They're a volume level locking SAN, which we think is probably good to take up to about 8 users, is normally quite a cheap option. Also, there are a few cheap what Matt calls, I think, ether sands. There are a few of those out there which are actually at a low cost. They are at a low cost, obviously, because they're not as feature rich. And again, I can't reiterate enough, avoid any IT NASs at this point, because you will soon find out within weeks why it's not made to do this job. Here's a slightly more complex scenario. So it could be 5 to 10 media composers or Final Cuts or Premieres. Now we've moved to a slightly different tiering of storage. So we've got tier 1 storage, which is up the top there, a nearline storage. So this is like a second. So I haven't just gone and bought one storage solution for my facility. I've actually gone and purchased two. Now we've done that for very good reasons. Mainly the tier 1 storage is very expensive, right? It's quite expensive, and nearline storage is very, very cheap. So I think Matt mentioned that you could probably get twice the amount of storage in your nearline as what you can in your high-end storage for about the same price. And, you know, with 4 terabyte drives and I think 6 terabyte drives coming out soon, I think that number has actually even gone higher. At this scenario, you want to use smarter storage up the top because you've got more complex work groups. So there are types of storage that allow you to do things like bin sharing and project sharing that you want to be able to let your operators have access to. Things like ISIS allows quite a lot of things in the Avid environment. I'm just using that as an example. There are other things that EditShare does, for example, that allows Premiere users and all that, and Final Cut users to share. You don't just need to use things like ISIS because a lot of the other products have ISIS emulation in them as well. So that's why I mean, there are a lot of vendors that you can use to do the same, basically the same task. Adding the second tier of storage, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking about bringing lots of data in for a project. When you've got 5 to 10 users, you've probably got a lot of content. You might be doing an episodic series, or you might be doing a film. So you've got a lot of content. So it's nice to be able to bring that content in, have the larger amount of content stay on your nearline cheap storage, and have an encoded copy up in your tier 1 storage. This is a way of, I guess, augmenting the cost of the storage, so you haven't got, 100 terabytes of very, very expensive storage that, if you were a bit smarter with your workflow, you could have turned that into, 40 terabytes of this and 20 terabytes of that. And, we're all trying to save as much money at the end of the day as we can. And in this scenario as well, this is where we do add the simple archiving and backups, where they become quite a strong part of the workflow. So I'll now pass on to Matt, who will go through something a tiny bit more complex.
Thanks, Johan. So on this diagram, we would have a scenario where it could be long form, it could be TVCs with a bit of grading and finishing. And up the top, you can see some high bandwidth storage with some smoke and resolve suites connected to it. Because this is the highest cost per terabyte, we have chosen only to allow enough disks to support the high bandwidth clients only. And it wouldn't make sense to have all the editorial clients hanging off this tier, as they are fine on a lower cost per terabyte storage shared tier, which you can see off to the left. So we actually have 2 tiers we are calling online and offline. The offline in this diagram is the same as the shared storage covered off by Johan in the previous diagram. At the bottom right, you have a NAS or nearline tier, which the offline and online can push media to and from. And also in addition, there are some graphics suites connected, which don't require the sustained throughput as an editorial or online suite, rather high IOPS, which an appropriately spec'd NAS can deliver. And it is important to spec out your NAS. I mean, you can get some very cheap LaCie and Synology NASs, but in this instance, you'd be looking at a bit more of an enterprise class solution, which is geared towards media. And we've got a couple of vendors. You can see the logos in there, Infotrend and EMC Isilon, just as a couple of examples. Bottom left is an archive tier, which would be an LTO library. This allows a level of automation, and projects can be spanned across the tapes. And I guess in summary on this slide, it's really important to map out a workflow and do all the bandwidth calculations with this type of solution to ensure you do get those workflow efficiencies across the different tiers of storage and across all the suites, whether they be your NLE type low bandwidth suites running Media Composer or your extremely high bandwidth finishing suites, the Resolve and the Smokes. And I think the last example, Sean's going to run through now. So let me just flick over to that. And Sean.
G'day, everyone. So this is more of a conceptual diagram. It's I guess, a made-up facility, but it bears resemblance to a facility that we have done before, or close resemblance, to be perfectly honest. As you can see, I'll just duck back to Matt's slide for a second. As you can see in the online shared storage, we have 3 vendors up there. And then when we flick over to my slide, we can see that one of those vendors has dropped down. Now, there is a reason for that. That's not saying that shared storage solution is no good, but it's not appropriate for this type of workflow. So let me just take you through what this workflow would be. On the bottom left-hand corner, we have the media composers that are there. So we've got 5 media composers, and we're hosting those on an offline shared storage. So that's the people that are cutting in DNX36 and are putting together the project. They're then feeding that material up onto their offline shared storage, and we have Flame Assist and DaVinci Resolve, either's fine, picking up that project file. Now the good part is we can actually have our high-res masters on our online shared storage, which is at the top in the middle. And you can take your Media Composer ALE into Flame Assist or Resolve and relink with the high-res material for finishing. Similarly, when you're on the Flame Assist and you've done your first comp or the first work for that can then feed up into the Flame Premium. Again, utilizing the same material that the Flame Assist was using, so not duplicating those assets, using the same DPX sequence and the same project to then do your more high-end compositing and your, perhaps 3D tracking and putting particles and things like that in there. So quite a very high-end workflow. The media composers may be working in DNX36. The Flame Assist may be working. They may be utilizing the same low-res material, but they may be using 2 and 4K material, but the Flame Premium generally would be using 2 and 4K high-res DPX sequences. Very, very high bandwidth. And the 2 vendors that you can see there, one is Roden Schwartz, who make a product called Spicerbox Cell, and the Spicerbox Flex, which utilizes the Quantum StoreNext file system. Now that's really, really good for your online finishing. So we've got offline shared storage, we've got online finishing as well. But as you can see on the right-hand side, we have NAS storage and 3D storage. Now the other guys have said we need a tier 2 storage to take off the material that doesn't necessarily require high performance disk. So as you can see, nearline tier 2 disk, we've got Infotrend, but we've got EMC Isilon there as well. So that's a second tier of disk that allows us to, I guess, park material there that doesn't need to be on the high-end expensive disk. But as you can see above that, we've got the NAS storage and 3D storage. Now we can have a performance volume of the NAS to facilitate products like Autodesk Maya or 3ds Max or Nuke, a number of those IOPS intensive programs and host applications. Now we could put those on the online shared storage solution, but they may not be appropriate to go on there, and we may actually have to put more investment into the online shared storage solution, which may not be as appropriate as implementing a NAS storage solution. The left-hand side we've got for video streaming, the right-hand side we've got for IOPS. So there's two quite distinct use cases there, but everything needs to work together. And as you can see, we can push material between any of those shared storage solutions that we've put there, and they're also tiered storage solutions as well. We're utilizing the archival solution to take material off tier 2 storage or off the primary storage to take an archive of the high-res masters and perhaps take them off-site. So to extrapolate that just one more step further, this is a common use case in post VFX and the film world. As you can see, we've still got our Flame Premium, our Flame Assist, and our Resolve, and they're doing their online work on the online shared storage. They may be getting fed from the offline storage solution, or in fact, we could have those 5 media composers directly hosted on the shared storage solution. Again, it's going to depend on what the material is that you're utilizing. We've got the online shared storage solution top left-hand side, but as you can see, the NAS storage and 3D storage has grown from the previous slide. I'll just take it back so you can see it. They're two sort of smaller nodes, but now it's quite a larger implementation. And the question would be, why is that the case? Well, the reason is we've got, if you look at the bottom of the slide, in the middle, we have 4 Nuke seats, 4 Mac seats, and 4 Maya suites. Now, they're IOPS intensive programs, and they don't require video streaming as such. We also have on the right-hand side a render farm as well. So these applications will be hammering the storage, and if we had that on our online storage solution, it may impact the performance of Flame Premium, or it may impact the performance of the online systems. Now, when you start having drop frames on those systems, that's when people start freaking out. So it's really provisioning for the use case that you have. Now, no, I haven't seen it yet, unless someone's got a very, very big, thick checkbook. I've never seen a storage solution that will do everything, and that's one of the key themes that we've tried to give you through the whole process. You may find a storage solution that's relevant to your facility, but as you grow, you need to look at how those host applications behave, what they do on storage, how they react to different connectivities. So as you add more and more and more, the complexities are greater and greater. Inversely, you see the list of vendors goes down and down and down and down. We have a preference for some vendors when it gets to a level of complexity that is quite high. We still have the tier 2 storage on the right hand side. We've added IP delivery via Aspera, and we're pushing that material off to the cloud for our DR as well. But we're also taking an archive of that material, either using Quantum, Atempo, Storage DNA, or Archiware. So there's a lot of options on that side. And in this sort of size of facility, it's something that you definitely need to plan for. So I guess in conclusion, what we want to get across to you guys is that every single facility is different. You need to make sure that you realize that there's no carbon clone or cookie cutter type scenario that we can do for each facility. Because you are investing a lot of money in your facility, you need to make sure that it's the right gear for you. You may do very similar work to a competitor of yours, or a facility that is similar to yours that may not be a competitor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your workflow is going to be exactly the same. So give us a call about that. Every single SAN and NAS is different. They behave differently. They do different things. Support is different. Their features are different. There's a lot of complexity and a lot of connectivities within those appliances or file systems that need to be looked at. So we can help you with that. Now, planning is definitely everything. There's the 6 Ps. It's basically poor prior planning makes for pretty poor performance. Most people use a different P word for pretty, but yeah, it's all about the planning. If you don't have a plan, it's very, very hard to try and fix something once it's gone in the door and get it to work. think workflow, don't think vendor. So articulate your workflow. Tell us what you want to do, and we can put the right tools in to help you achieve that goal. Don't say, well, I only use this NLE and I only use this platform because that's what I like, and there is no flexibility with that. There are you will need to be flexible with elements of this, because there is no you can't just pick things off the shelf and make it work. So there is a degree of flexibility there. Definitely don't let your NLE dictate your storage. Now, if you've picked Premiere and you want to use one particular type of storage, it may not necessarily be the best utilization of the storage or the NLE. Similarly, don't pick storage because you're aligned necessarily with that vendor, unless you've done the due diligence, given us a call and said, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Can you guys help me? Show me where the pitfalls are, if there are any, and then we can help you go further with that. But yeah, one theme that we've kept going with is spend time talking with us, because we want to ascertain the right fit for you, not just what sells well. So that's our main goal. We want to help you guys, and we want to enable you guys to achieve your goals with the right infrastructure, and not be hamstrung by anything. So are Digistore partnering with cloud storage providers or making recommendations? I can make some recommendations. At the same time, it's really going to depend on what the use case is, how you're getting that material there, how you would like to, I guess, transfer it, and how that needs to work within your facility. So I can definitely take that question offline. I do know the person that's asked, so definitely keen to continue that conversation. But I think we'll probably need to do that offline, because that's slightly more complex. Okay, how do you see the future of fiber channel technology? It's a good question. I was actually having this conversation over a cold beer yesterday. Fiber channel is an interesting one. Fiber channel it's a technology that we've utilized for quite a number of years. It's robust, it's extremely reliable, and it provides fantastic throughput. At the same time, we have a divergence where a lot of vendors are going down the 10 gig E path. Now, 10 gig E is interesting in that it's still IP based, and it's the same as 1 gig E, but it's effectively pumping more data down the pipe. Now, for my mind, and what we're speaking to customers about, is if you are using 10 gig E, there are elements of 10 gig E that you do need to be aware of. In our experience, and with some of the vendors that we've worked with, it doesn't necessarily provide 10 times the speed of 1 gig E, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to be 100% 10 gig E. So it waxes and wanes. That's a very complicated. I guess it's a very simple way of me to sort of describe a very complicated conversation. I think single gigabit and bonded dual gigabit technologies. People like Avid ISIS utilize single gig and dual gig bonded. DDP also utilize it. There's probably a couple of other vendors there. We've found that the implementation of dual 1 gigabit Ethernets are very, very successful. 10 gig E is very, very successful, but at the same time, it needs to be planned quite specifically. You don't want to give carte blanche to everyone in an organization to just flog your storage at 10 gigabit Ethernet. But certainly with our backup archive, NAS resharing over 10 gig E to single gig, it's been extremely successful. If you were to provision a SAN solely on 10 gigabit Ethernet, I would probably want to have a longer conversation about what the use case would be for that and the reasoning behind that, as it may be more of a question of workflow as opposed to actually as opposed to just a straight up implementation. Just to add on the fiber channel side of things, it is interesting on the vendor side of things. Um, on the fiber channel vendors, one of the main vendors, well, one of the traditional vendors of fiber channel technology that we've utilized has not brought out a 16 gig switch, and they have actually end of life their enterprise level switch, which doesn't necessarily mean bad things. But I guess it's just an interesting point to bring. So do you see a smart way of traffic shaping in a fiber channel environment? Well, that's quite a technical question. And I know the individual that's asking. Thank you very much. There is no definitive way to, in a file system that I've come across yet, and I'm happy to be proved wrong, and I would actually like someone to prove me wrong, because it would be a fantastic feature to be able to cap that bandwidth. Now, previously we have capped bandwidth on a single user over fiber channel. If you've got an 8 gig switch, you can put 4 gig SFPs or 4 gig connectivity to that client, which is a very hacky way of doing it and not one that I would suggest, but that would be as close as I could get to traffic shaping on an FC environment. I have had a conversation recently with a vendor who is looking to implement that within their solution. My understanding is it's a post IBC implementation, but at this stage it's not live, and I won't mention who the vendor is at this point. But yes, definitely stay tuned. And I know the person that asked that question, I know you will definitely stay tuned. Has anyone actually set up an ISIS 2500 in their facility in Australia? I like that question. Other people would not be able to answer that question. I haven't seen one in the wild yet. And I'm sure the person that asked that question is chuckling away right now. That's a good point. Do you need a quote? Look, I believe there are quite a number through APAC, but not in ANZ as far as I'm aware.